You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Close to their wheelchair lift, and that becomes part of the difficulty. So currently the leak is not coming to the surface. It's actually following the sewer line and going into the sewer manhole. And if I had to put a guess on it, it's, 2 to 3 gallons a minute at this point, a very, very rough guess. It's not a huge leak. No one is currently complaining that they have no water, but that has been the history there when the leaks get worse and worse, and then all of a sudden no one has any water, and then, it becomes an immediate response. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
So just review for Donnie, this has been going on a number of years. There's no positive good solution. There's just probably the best of not optimal solutions, but we do want to get it addressed.
Well, I would just, since I was there, this is information coming from the water. Most houses, most properties, you're on the main drag and you get serviced in through your front. This, because there is all rock here, they're serviced through the back. Okay.
Just those 4 houses.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. So I take it there's no water on South Missouri Avenue.
There is.
Oh, there is.
So the houses that are on the east side are fed from the water main. So, I mean, if the board decided like, okay, well, why don't we just tap them off the main that is on Prospect Street as well as Mizzier, just keep in mind that the services come in the side of this house and the back of everyone else's house, as well as the sewer. So if you wanted to do that, the village's current code allows for us to make a tap and leave it at the curb stop. So let's say for this house, if we made a tap and left it here, now who's going to get it from here to the back of the house? And this is definitely all rock. So if you went over to Chase's as an example, there's a whole shelf of rock, and that area is extremely difficult. And, we don't know what we would run into. You might have to use a hoe ram for every one of the service lines. I could tell you that I've done work at the top of this intersection, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of rock here, from top to bottom.
The biggest problem is right there, is what you're talking about.
Well, yes, currently, because there's a water leak right next to this wheelchair.
So we've also dug it up over here.
Oh, forget it. I've patched.
It's all leaking?
All back.
So can you move this over to get, is that what it, away from that chairlift? And get it right like on the property line?
Well, it's 2-inch. So your ability to bend 2-inch copper is extremely difficult. And, now at that point, you may have to go, if you did it in a loop and you're going around it, now you're digging more this way. So you're on her property, and then eventually there's a fence here that separates the properties. And this gentleman's,
There's no easement. Yeah, the issue is not the chairlift. The issue is
that is the issue.
What I was asking is, could you abandon that and move it over? And
You could, but this gentleman here apparently said no to the easement, so you can't work on heavy work on his property.
And is he off the water line too?
Yes.
We should just run it on Missouri Avenue and call it a day.
You could, but as long as
Now, there's gonna be a lot of rock.
Tammy said, you'd be leaving them a service, it's carved in rock, out in your front yard, and then, 5 feet deep in rock. There's no way.
That's just the option. Do you give us the right of way, or
Is
we're gonna put
there
certain
no
number in
way
your house,
of relining that like you did with the sewer line?
like everybody else in the village?
It's only a 2-inch galvanized, so it's like a fence post.
So there's not much inside that 2 inches.
So when we dug it up, you repair it at one spot, and it's literally breaking
What this drawing shows is in 2019, Casey, it was Melinda Clark and I met with the water department and Pete, and we walked all through these backyards to understand the issues. And collectively, we came up with a possible solution of a 4-inch pipe, water main, from tapping off from Mizzier Avenue, going through, this is the restaurateur man. Okay, and going along his side yard and then going in the backyard of these two parcels. You know, how close to the house or how far back, it's not fully determined, but we drew this for discussion purposes. What we want to do also, we had suggested that this house and this house could be served directly off from Prospect. We knew from years ago that this man wasn't very agreeable to this whole thing. And we knew here that the pipe goes underneath either his shed or their handicap lift. It's too tight in there to work. So that's why we had come up collectively with this possible solution of 1, 2, 3, served from this line, served in the back. They'd have their services in the back still, and these two folks would be served here and here. And it wouldn't change their world either, because he's served in the back and they're served in the side. So,
You just have to figure out how to cap it.
right,
Which is able to be done.
right.
And you have a dead end for the 3.
And it still
Correct.
doesn't settle the issue, because now if
Yes.
something happens on that line,
Right.
does the village still own it?
I
Or
think it was
does, you know-
discussed that this would be an easement.
Right.
But that's up to you.
But what happens to those two houses that are off the old line, where the leak is currently?
No, you do away with that and have two new taps in off of that, right?
And they'd have to connect to the new taps.
You know, and then who puts it in? The village doesn't have an easement, and we have a new 2-inch line going from the water main to our shutoff.
Well, a couple of options. I think what Craig indicated that day was, when we talked about requesting the easement in writing, he wanted someone to go talk to them first. I thought he was going to be the one to speak with them. So we have to have some information from Craig as to where things are at in the process of this. And if he has not done anything verbally, I would like to request that he moves ahead with something in writing, because we've been waiting on this for so long, and with the current leak, we want to keep going. If the gentleman on the corner refuses the easement request again, we will have to discuss what our options are, which may include condemnation of that part of the property if the village feels that's the best action to take. But one way or another, we've got to come to closure on this, because every year there's something going on and nothing's getting improved. So, we want to have the best solution we possibly can. We don't want to take on any more liabilities than we have to. Normally, anything on the property from the connection to their,
Curb stop.
thank you, is their responsibility. But let's see if we can at least get an agreement first on easements and see what we have to do after that. Does that sound reasonable?
I think it sounds very reasonable, but unfortunately, it's the same conversation we've been having for,
Yeah. 4 years.
I certainly don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but
2 years.
that's the fact.
You need a game plan.
And then there's,
Right, like right now.
there's the sewer side as well,
Yeah,
which is the whole other kind of.
that's an old one story, yeah.
Yeah, I understand we've been going to this for a while. We've got some new people involved. We've got some old people involved. Let's, I apologize. I did not take another step contacting Craig in particular about this, because, we met at the property that day and he indicated he was going to do some follow-up. He has not spoken with anyone at the village hall about his follow-up, so we.
Well, we talked about it,
Okay,
and I said, how are we moving on this problem?
okay. And has he given you any indication?
Well, he
that
hasn't
they can-
indicated that they've come to a conclusion. I mean, this
Has
is
he
this
even
is the first.
contacted the homeowner? I mean, how difficult is this? You know what I mean?
No, I can't answer that, but this is the first time that I've seen this scenario about this.
Yeah, we would have shared it before your site meeting, but we found out after, so.
That doesn't do anybody any good until you obtain the easements.
It's not as if you.
Well,
Like that scenario either, Ken.
I can see
Oh,
that.
yeah, no, I'm with you.
I can see that.
totally get it.
I can see that the homeowner is concerned. I think he's always been difficult, okay, but he does have a kind of nice shed there, and he's concerned about this.
Sure.
Yeah, but we're also concerned about our water here, so I think we need to go in direction. If this pipe breaks tonight, what is the water board, or what is the water plant gonna do tomorrow? Are we shutting him off and fixing it, or are we shutting him off and either you go this way or you don't have the water, we're not on your property?
Kenny and I have been telling them from the get-go, we have no easements, we shouldn't be on private property working, we're not covered by any kind of insurance or liability. In a perfect world, these would all be dedicated to the owner and they would be responsible for it, like every other population.
I mean, I would say,
And if you do this, you open yourself up to other instances where people might say,
yeah, you can come dig in my front yard, my water line breaks underneath my front porch, I need permission. Because it's not fair for other ones.
Yes.
For us.
Well, I think he just has to understand the consequences, this guy. This is probably the only scenario, one of the few scenarios where it's this way in the village. Would that be a fair statement?
There are other ones. So as an example, there's a 2-inch line that goes from Delaverne Avenue through the grass between the curb and the sidewalk and feeds some houses in the town of Poughkeepsie that goes through their yards. So that is similar. There's also another one that's on Old Route 9, right where Pizza Hut is. We have a single 3/4-inch line that feeds right up to the car repair shop. Basically in front of where Boswick or where the fire hydrant is, where that apartment complex is. Same, yes, correct. Same type of scenario, but those are the only ones that I'm,
But the better question, the better point is, what happens if the pipe breaks? Okay?
What does that, what would you? do?
Well, I can tell you that the pipe did break on Old Route 9, basically in front of Renhack's building, and he fixed it. We shut it off
Now, in
and he
this
fixed it.
situation, say something busted way, whatever, it busted wide open and water flowing. What would you do?
Where
wherever it is,
prior to this, we
6 houses.
fixed it. But we've
Was it a big
been,
leak, a real big leak?
oh yeah, I mean, every
Shuts
single
it out,
time,
water.
you know,
Everybody's okay.
yeah, to the point where people don't have water. And then, you're working in people's backyards. At the time, in Chase's yard, it was a pool.
Yeah.
I believe since the pool is no longer existing, but it's a difficult spot. You're working on a hill.
Right.
And, we could barely get the vac truck in there, which made it much easier to repair.
Right.
But the most recent leak, we're driving on the side of this gentleman's driveway.
Yeah.
And I gotta give a lot of credit to the highway guys, because they got pieces of equipment down there literally within inches of this house.
in the dark at night. So
And you're not, you are not,
It's always in the dark.
you are not getting
Without
a
the
vac
homeowner's
truck
permission.
in there to repair that. It's all
an accident. but
backhoe.
we're all having to work it out. Chase Junior was actually helped us out.
Oh, yes,
Giving us access.
yes, yeah.
The village, should limit its, how much it's working in somebody's backyard.
My feeling, for what it's worth, is we certainly should have easements where it's appropriate. Any work that we do within that easement, if we impact someone else's property negatively, we have to restore it to whatever it was. But that's our obligation because we're working on our easement. If someone incurs a leak or a problem or some type of damage or needs a new water line from the tap or to the connection or whatever it is, John, you can help me.
Curb stop.
Get it wrong. Thank you.
Curb
stop. Big effort in 2 years. We have the ability, I assume, with our rules and regs and our bylaws, that if it's an emergency situation that impacts public health and safety to the rest of the residents of the water in the village, we can go in and fix it and bill the homeowner to repay us for the expense. And the only reason we would go in and do it is because there was a health and safety issue for the rest of the customers. Outside of that, the customer should be handling the expense themselves. We should only be on someone's property, working on their property, and when I say that, I mean their pipe, their piece, whatever. If it's an emergency that we feel would cause negative impact to the rest of water service. I know that means a huge expense, but unfortunately, that's the price you pay for being a homeowner. Now, do we want to set up a situation where we're willing to do that under certain insurance conditions and a repayment process? I suppose we could talk about it, but I think it would be crazy because we're paying prevailing wage rate to our employees. I would find it hard to believe that we would be less expensive than anybody else. And again, the insurance situation, I don't know whether we're covered if one of our staff gets injured on someone else's property and we're doing work that legitimately should have been a homeowner's expense. So I would rather stay away from it, but I'm willing to entertain other options if we feel there are some that we should be discussing.
And if you look at the easement there, Mary, part of the easement is not only do you have to give the village rights to go on it, you have to keep that reasonably clear so that there's access. It's just, in the area that you're talking over next to Prospect Street, it's just not physically possible. In order to do that, you would ask them to remove existing improvements.
We were at that point 2 months ago when I sent the letter to Greg, basically telling the homeowners they needed to make this repair.
And the board actually voted on something.
Yeah, and we shut them down.
Yeah, and we were waiting on Craig for a response, and then, he asked for a walkthrough, so we got the walkthrough. And I got the impression that he seemed to understand the situation a little bit better, and he wanted to pursue verbal at the time. I indicated when I was there that, Mayor Matt had pursued verbal and got nothing. So, I thought that we should take the next step and put something in writing and get a declaration one way or the other so that we could use that as a time mark moving forward. So I think if we've not gotten anything verbal to date, Mayor, if you have no objection, I would like to direct him, if he's gotten no response as of yet, that we want to pursue a written notification.
I have no objection.
Okay, great. Then that's what I will do when I get home today.
With the understanding as well,
Yes.
is that the board has already voted for us not to go on that property.
So,
Prior to,
right, but we did authorize the letter to indicate what was going on. Let's get his response to that particular letter. If he indicates that there are some illegalities in the original letter that we asked for that John sent to him, then we'll deal with that response when it comes, okay? But let's at least get him to, his direction right now is that we do not want a verbal approach. If he has not already made a verbal approach, we don't want a verbal approach. We want a response to the letter that Casey Engineering sent to him in terms of whether we are legally empowered to make that approach. And we want a yes or no response. If the response is no, we're not legally empowered to make that approach, then we have to discuss it at the next board meeting and see where we go to.
Oh, we have to legally give them water. Correct?
I don't think there's a tenant. I don't know.
John approached the health department and
How about a legal tenant?
This one has 2 illegal tenants in the basement. 2 illegal apartments and 2 illegal.
And the thing is we already voted on it, and I think if this leak gets any worse, I mean, we're not allowed to go on their property. We're not allowed to do, because of that one guy. I think we ought to shut the water off and say, hey, you work with us or.
Well, I don't think you can do it without notification. And that's what the letter was
But
supposed to
then,
be.
but then we have Brian write a thing saying there was a leak on the property and he had 10 days to fix it.
That is the code. I'm not sure if Brian ever actually sent it out, but
No, because we're waiting for Craig's legal benediction that it was okay. So we never got that. Things kind of skewed and took a different direction. So now we're gonna rein it back in and indicate that, you know, we need to get that letter issued because of the leak situation. Can he at least render a legal opinion as to whether or not we have the right to send that letter? And he's gotta do it in the next 4 days if he wants my signature on it.
Well, we have a meeting Wednesday, so we can.
Okay, he'll be there.
Is there a way of putting a meter?
Yeah.
On that, out in the road, so all that loss gets billed at everybody?
I mean,
I did think of that before as well.
you could,
It's expensive.
but then it's like, who do you bill it to? Do you just split it up to 5 of them?
Yeah,
We could throw right their water use, and whatever percentage of the total is theirs, then they get that percentage.
I mean, is it hard to do that? I'm sure you have to.
I mean, it's, you know, it's a 2-inch line. It's, yeah, I mean, you know, now you got couplings and, you know, if you're gonna do that, then you would just fix the leak.
Right, and dig it enough, you can make it worse.
You go over, look at it,
I know all the properties. so.
you go ahead, a wheelchair, lift there, so you're basically digging right underneath it, and relatively deep from what our leak detector guy and Kenny tell us, it could be 6 feet deep there.
Yes.
So you're right against their house.
The possibilities are there.
You're gonna walk it tomorrow or whenever you.
I know that, I know all the properties.
She's got, she's got a concrete pad, and she has this lift on it, which is an issue, because you can easily go in. Right. And then you start breaking things and repairing people's houses, and it seems.
I mean, even as a homeowner, if you go on their property and you get injured,
No,
I'm assuming you would have the ability to sue them.
you could put a meter there and they started getting $1,000 water bill. They'll start figuring out that pretty quick.
Yeah, they'll hate each other for sure.
I mean, another thing you could do is come up with a mag meter that just attaches on the top of the pipe. It's not perfect, but,
But even then, the neighbors are gonna start attacking each other depending on where.
and then you still have to go on their property to install it
You
anyway.
can't get it out.
The source.
Well, then you'd have to go back to the water main to shut off the corporation, and then, you know, it's not the
That
best.
2-inch valve box is right on the backside of the sidewalk, so it's on, right on the property line as it is.
It's actually in the sidewalk, really, you know, I mean, it's.
Well, let's start with what we've got. One way or another, we're swaddled by Wednesday night. It's a simple yes or no answer. Either he's made a verbal connection or he hasn't. If he hasn't, we want a response within a week.
Good luck.
All right, yeah, I understand that, but I understand. And we'll see where we go to from there. In the meantime, it's great.
I mean,
Keep thinking of backup options, but let's assume we're going to move
He
forward
could
like
even
this.
put pressure on the homeowner by sending a letter to the other homeowner stating what the village is willing to do. And if he doesn't, because one person doesn't want it, then everybody's gonna be responsible for their own.
Letter. Doesn't say who's responsible, but it's in the letter that all 5 of them.
Well, I know one of them with his 2 illegal apartments are not gonna let his tenants get the water shut off. Because he's gonna lose, some revenue.
I will take whatever pressure there is at the moment that helps us move this along. Okay, anybody else with anything? If not, we're gonna move on to water chairman report, and I'm gonna defer any report because I think we're gonna be talking about everything as we do all this to our 2 guests at the meeting. What we've asked them to do, and for those of you who don't already know, there are a lot of capital projects, capital improvements facing us. We've got plans for a number of things, but we don't have a good grasp, at least I don't have a good grasp on what our revenue sources are, what is currently available, what is currently agreed to with EFC, what our loan rates might be for that, what our limitations and restrictions are. So what I'm looking for is a better understanding from our treasurer and our grant writer as to what our options are as we evaluate these capital projects.
Well, I mean, with EFC and all that, that's not technically grant stuff, so I don't have any info on that. What I've done, actually, is doing this with Tri-Muni as is, was looking at different grant funding sources for them as well for water and sewer projects. And I've been talking with the EFC. I got a list of a decent amount of grants for various things, depending on if it's drinking water or sewer, or if it's for getting private septic tanks off. The only thing, there's a list, I have about 7 handouts, and not many people would be here, but a big thing for us is, I know, obviously with our financial state, I know the board is, trying to tighten the belt a bit. I mean, for a lot of these grants, even if we get funding, it's still gonna cost us a lot. It already seems like we're going for some grants that I'm now being told we might have to give back. So the only thing I'm afraid of is if we go for funding and we get it, and immediately we go, well, actually, we don't want to pay our side, and we have to give the grant back. So, like I said, I got a list I can hand it to our board or the water board, and we can look it over and further discuss different avenues we can take. But I mean, regardless, it's going to cost us money, even if we get it.
So we currently have options, but no commitments. We have sources that we've reached out to apply.
We've been given a list of a few places. But,
Okay. What specifically regarding any of the water improvements, is there anything that you have carved out in the application that would be pertinent to the water improvements themselves? I understand there's a lot mixed up with Tri-Muni right now.
When you say the application,
Any grant applications that you've been discussing, basically the items that you've been mentioning? I know there were, Sean Maloney had something come up, was that?
we did. We put in
Right.
for the community funding. We asked for $3 million, or is it $1 million for here? 3 for trying.
That was my question. In the application process, how much of those funds were assigned in your justification that had to do with water projects alone?
Well, we did 2 separate ones. One was for Tri-Muni, $3 million, and I believe the other one we did, I think it was, I have to go back and check. I think it was a little over, I think it was around $2 million we applied for on behalf of the village.
On behalf of the village in general?
So separate of Tri-Muni. It was a one Tri-Muni application and one for this plan. And that was a little over $1 million.
I'm sorry, you can ask for clarification again. In your initial statement, you said on behalf of the village, and then you said for this plan. So when you said you applied for $2 million, was that specifically for water projects?
Yes.
Okay.
The water filter plant.
Yes.
Okay. All
And
right, thank you. That was geared towards the filter plant. Okay.
and we were told that we probably wouldn't hear whether to get it or not in the November at the earliest.
Okay.
We can hear about it. That's when they start talking about it. So we got a long time before we hear anything back about those.
Okay, so following along those lines, so that's that particular source. What other sources on behalf of the water projects is out there in terms of grant applications? Is there anything else right now?
Well, one, we've been, it's not a grant, it's technically a zero interest loan. We've been, John has been doing a lot with the USDA to get funding through that. I think I got an email for an update. I've been out for 2 weeks, so I've been trying to do what I can from home. But I don't know if you, where we are on that, if that's fully in. I know they've been coming back with some questions here and there.
It's a 1.5% interest rate over
Oh, is
38
it?
years.
Okay.
And
Sorry, how many years, Nancy?
38, and the USDA is requesting a meeting with the village,
Yes.
and they want, that starts a 30-day clock for the village to either say yes, they're interested, or no, they want to decline the potential funding. We've been looking to get a conversation with you folks and Rick. That's tentatively on the calendar for tomorrow. I don't know if maybe we talk about it now and then we don't have to meet tomorrow.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that when the village is ready to have the conversation with USDA, that we're all on the same page. And we kind of thought that you folks might want to do some homework to see what strings are attached to that financing, to see if it makes sense for the village to go that route.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if, again, I don't know how much of the board we need to talk to. I just know 1.5 interest. I don't know how much in the end that would, end up costing us over time. But I think that would be the main conversation with the actual board is that something they'd be willing to pay for along down the road, or are we, because last time I started to talk to the board, it seemed like we're gonna tremendously slow down grant applications.
If I remember correctly, the USDA application was for about 18 million
Yeah,
overall.
yeah.
Do you know how much of that was carved out for, you said everything was including the kitchen sink, so what part of our sink was in there, do we know?
The water plant, the couple of tanks and a lot of distribution improvement.
So total for us alone, do you have any,
It was all for water.
the 18 million?
Yeah, it was all
Yeah,
water.
okay.
It's,
Both tanks and.
Yeah.
Filter plant and, yeah.
it's a lot more than we anticipate you'd be entertaining, but.
Right,
um,
okay, but that's not, it's not 18 million for the village and 4 of it's for water.
It's all water.
It's all water, okay. So understanding that once we get on the phone with them, it starts the 30-day clock ticking, what's the time frame after that?
I don't know.
Okay, and are we able to, when we say yay or nay, is it an all or nothing, or can we say, yeah, but we only want?
Oh, yeah, 'cause it's said up to. So
Okay,
you're potentially eligible for up to 18.951 million.
do you know what their, I've never worked with USDA before, do you know what their reimbursement cycle is like?
No,
Okay. And is it 100% or is it 90%? Is it fully funded on the loan, or do we have to do some type of matching?
those are questions for
Yeah.
USDA.
Okay,
But given that it's a loan, I'd be surprised if it had a
Right,
match.
a
Usually a
match.
grant has a match, but a loan doesn't, right?
Well, the 1.5 interest is our match.
Right, that's your
all
match.
right, all right.
Actually, I misspoke, it's 1.75, sorry.
1.75.
1.75, it says it in the letter.
All right, and there are no, because I know with some of the EFC grants, with the authority, what we're facing is they won't reimburse for staffing. So are there any limitations on this in terms of force accounts?
I think so, well. I don't think
EFC allowed dispersing on force account. I don't know about USDA.
Okay.
I haven't used
Well,
USDA.
no, some of the EFC loans won't force account, but it may just because it's a mix of grant and loan, but, all right. So right now, we're looking at 100% if the board will authorize it. Okay, so are those the only two we have actively out there right now? In terms of
As
grant
far as,
applications
as far as water grants,
or loans?
or loans, they didn't, or at least if they do a CFA, the consolidated funding application process, which is a grant application frenzy, usually happens at the end of May. It hasn't last year or this year. I think they might be trying to do something this fall to sort of start it up again. And that's usually a nice spot to find a lot of different types of grants for that. If that does happen to be later in the summer.
Right.
So I think if you were going to do USDA funding, the water board would have to approve that as well, because typically the water fund is going to be paying back that 1.5% on the village.
That's true.
So would it be our board approving it first or recommending it to the village board, and then the village board would authorize the borrowing? Okay.
And we've been talking about there's COVID relief included money for municipalities. And there's very few items that you can spend it on. One of those items is water infrastructure.
That you
Water
can
and sewer,
sort of-
yes.
How would we document? What are the requirements for it?
I mean, so we're supposed to get half of it by the end of June.
Okay,
And then, I don't know when it's coming, probably next year or something like that, we have to spend it by 2024.
okay, We have no problem spending it.
It's capital work, right?
As long as we understand the protocols under which we're receiving it, the infrastructure, but under certain protocol, or parameters in which.
It just says water, sewer infrastructure, I
Okay.
think it's more.
Okay.
I bet it'd be something probably along the lines of sending of our
I
invoices.
did, just before I left the office, I did get another email from the Department of Treasury about it,
Okay.
so I can look into it some more.
Great.
Probably more detail in my email. But it's supposed to be about $600,000.
But then total, that's what the village will get.
So that would be carved out for the different areas in Maine. Okay. The $800,000 EFC remainder of the loan for contract 5, were you able to look into that and look at any documentation for that?
Nancy had sent me some stuff for that.
Uh-huh.
So I haven't-
Okay.
As far as I know, the $800,000 approximate construction cost, that would be if the village chose.
Proceed.
That would be, you'd have to do a funding application for the new listing, and that would be market rate, which
Okay.
market rate fluctuates, but in December of 2020, as a snapshot, market rate through EFC was 2.5%.
So when you say we have to apply for the new listing, we'd have to get approved specifically for that project again, or are we approved for that project?
It's on the annual list, and so your funding application would be due by June for the 2021 list. If it was, by the way, the water plant is a separate listing. I did check. The water plant is a separate listing on the annual list as well. You either do your funding application for the 2021 intended use plan, which is current, or you could choose to do a listing for the 2022. I don't know the deadline for DWSRF. CWSRF's been moved to July 16th. It's usually in May. And CWSRF is much better documented online than DW. So I don't know if they're doing the same deadline. I couldn't get that through research.
Okay.
We have to talk to Brock.
Okay, thank you. And Jen, what other capital funds, if any, are available to us right now?
You currently have $251,000, 215, sorry, 215, 522 in the water capital account.
To the best of your knowledge, is any of it earmarked for anything specifically at the moment? As we look to close out this fiscal year, what's our, I never used to look at these numbers either, so I'm sorry, putting you on the spot. What is our expectation of budget closeout right now? Are we at least going to close even? We're not going to have a deficit,
I think you're, you've got a little bit
little buffer? Okay. So certainly not any kind of form where we would be able to consider that we had enough excess revenue funds that we wanted to put it towards a project. We probably wanted to just roll over to address any unexpected issues for next year.
Plus, it didn't budget for an increase of rates for next year,
Right.
so,
Thank you for reminding me. That's my next question. When we repay EFC, USDA, anything like that, is that done raised through the tax dollars under the tax rolls, or does that go directly into the water rates? So anything we do is going to affect the water rate. When was the last time the base rate was reassessed as opposed to the price per cubic gallons, right?
I'm pretty sure that all rates went up last year,
Okay,
3%.
okay. So is that what you just normally do a across the board percent
So
increase?
Matt is normally doing this.
Okay. So we haven't done an assessment lately as to how much would go into the, how much is in the base? Okay. we currently have loans that we're paying back, correct? Are there any cash flow issues with people not paying? They have to be collected through re-levy that affect the repayment of the debt as opposed to collecting through the tax process.
It's not going to affect. repayment of debt.
We collect enough in the rates, people are paying their bills that we have the cash flow to repay
Yeah.
the debt. Okay.
That was another thing we're waiting on Craig Wallace for, is because there's some bill on Cuomo's desk that we can't re-levy.
I know. How much do we, ballpark figure, how much do we normally re-levy, generally re-levy? Maybe
Normally
about-
it's about 55, it was 55 last year.
Okay,
This year, I think it's like 33.
okay, so anywhere between 35 and 50, we could be short on cash flow if we cannot do our normal re-levy process for this year.
And a lot of the people who are on the re-levy list just normally pay their bills through that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And now they're gonna go another year without paying the bill.
Does everyone here understand what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we probably have to think about that too in terms of our assessment as to how we move forward from a cash flow perspective, so that we don't put the village in a difficult position of having to deal with our cash flow problem.
Is there any way to penalize to,
Now, there's also, you can't,
you can not allow
you
to
can't
implement
charge,
penalty? Okay.
which is strict penalties on that.
I mean, they currently receive a penalty on their bill if it's not paid on time. What's happening right now
Right.
is, the COVID relief thing. They're
Right.
saying you can't penalize someone because they can't pay their bill. Unfortunately,
But
what's
also,
not,
they haven't gotten contacted by anybody saying that they can't pay their bills.
right. So, yeah, so we're in a little bit of a rock and a hard place right now. So here's my concern. We are trying to move forward. Oh, first, does anybody have any questions for Jess or Todd concerning this information? Corey, I'm sorry.
Nope.
We are at a place right now where we are filing or have filed with the water department. We'll put forward a resolution after this is done to provide our 90% design plans for the filtration plant to the health department. We're currently in violation because we have no backup and they want a plan. They are being firm about the fact that they want a plan, but they will work with us in terms of how we move forward with that plan and how it works. But we've got to display and demonstrate good intent that we are going to correct this situation. Our options in front of us right now are working with the town, renegotiate our current connection. They have indicated a willingness to have that discussion. Unfortunately, it doesn't just involve the town of Poughkeepsie, it also involves the Joint Water Board. We would have to indicate in this plan by the end of the month where we're at in the stages of those negotiations. We're going to have to talk about rate, amount of water, and length of time that we'd be looking at using it. We have 9% design plans for a water filtration facility. At a meeting last Friday, we reviewed those plans with Casey Engineering. We have asked Casey to submit those plans to the health department, but at the same meeting, the operator raised some questions as to whether there might be an alternative plan in place. So they were going to pursue working on that. But we are working in parallel because, again, we have to be able to provide the health department with our process of how we're moving forward. The third option in terms of minimizing or eliminating the health department's concern is a tie-in with the town of Wappinger, for which we are looking to have this plan of an $800,000 loan from EFC. Right now, between attendance at the village board meeting and understanding that the current board has concerns over expenditures. And the fact that we're not talking until possibly November for any kind of indication that we have funds. And for either of the two loans, Mayor, do you have any concerns about negotiating with the town of Poughkeepsie for our connection?
No, I don't, well, I think the round before when we negotiated, I think it was always a problem with the city end of the negotiation on the joint water board.
I was gonna say that, has there been any like, because the city and the town like to butt heads over joint water.
I know.
So, I
Has
know,
there been any reconciliation between the two of them that would make this smoother?
There appears to at least have been a legal settlement over whose water is whose. How that would affect any future negotiations for water pricing, I don't know. Peter has indicated that he spoke with Dan Taylor last week, and Dan has indicated that he would at this point be satisfied that we had a firm plan under our feet if we could indicate that we could move forward with reconnecting to the town of Poughkeepsie while we worked on the other two items. I'm not sure that we have a choice right now in terms of being able to, within a reasonable period of time, indicate that we could move forward with either of the two, either the filter plant or the connection with the town of Wappingers. Does anybody feel any differently?
Well, if the interconnection with the town of Wapner is part of EFC, right, we can find out about that,
Could you check that out?
right?
What?
When can we find out about the EFC for
If it's,
contract hire?
There is, as far as I know, there's no grant being discussed for contract 5. The EFC, if you want to finance through EFC, it would be market rate, and you have to do that finance application by June. The question for EFC was, is there a penalty in some form to the village if the village does not build the interconnection in the near future? Because the interconnection was a storage component which was described in the successful water grant that was issued to the village in 2016. So that conversation needs to happen between the village and the finance person at EFC. Brock Rogers, the engineer, project manager at the health department, he was not sure if it's an issue or not.
I was gonna say, could you follow up on that? Thank you. Let's assume we're gonna move forward with an application, Nancy, what would the timing be for that? Due by July, but then what happens?
The funding application is due in June.
June, okay.
That's a finance question. I don't usually do funding applications.
I'm
I
just trying to,
deal with the engineers. I don't deal with the,
I'm just trying to understand if we're again talking before we actually know whether we've been approved, if we're talking the end of the year again, we're just trying to get some sense. Can you see if you can get an answer to
I'll
that?
call them tomorrow and see if I can.
I'm concerned about providing a report to the health department, a plan to the health department that says, we have no idea if we're going to be able to fund either of the two construction projects, and at this time, we have no negotiations in place with the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm not sure that's going to be an acceptable answer at the end of this month in terms of having a plan. So again, we have no commitment for funding right now. And even if we had a commitment for funding at 1.75 or market rate or whatever it was, we have to be able to get the village board on board that these, at least one of these is a necessary improvement. On top of that, what they're not aware of yet, although Ricky is that we're facing an $11 million tri-muni improvement, and don't have any numbers at this point as to what portion of that is the villages. So, you know, I don't think Tri-Muni is gonna wanna get held up with that either. So, you know, as we go to the village board and say, you know, we need X amount of $1 million for the Tri-Muni improvement, we need $2 million for the water filtration plant, we need $800,000 for the connection to the town of Wappinger, otherwise we may be penalized by ESC. PS, you know, it's all, you know, a lot of this is in that $18 million USDA grant. They still may not be willing to they still may not be willing to authorize that. Now, that being said, I'm not sure you have a lot of choices in terms of not getting any of these things done. So even if it becomes an ugly negotiation with the Joint Water Board, we may have to bend and sway a little bit in order to have
My question is this, I think the village as a whole has to decide, do we need to do this filtration? And I think that's an obvious answer, yes. Do we need to do this interconnection with TOW? I think that question, that answer is yes. And do we need to do that little bit of sewer with that in front of the glass place? Whatever it's called, Triumph, it's gonna change hands pretty soon, different.
Okay.
Okay, yes. So add up the total dollar amounts. And can the village, because you have water and sewer and user fees, can the village afford to do these projects, even if you did not have a grant? I mean, you might have to raise rates a little bit if you didn't get any grants. But as long as you have user fees, you have to make a decision. You have to draw the line and say it. It's just like these 6 houses. I'd be nice to them, but you want to know something? Nice is now over. We need to fix this water line. We need to fix it because you're killing us with the leak, the water we're losing, and we don't have water to spare. I know the guy likes his shed, but guess what? You like it to be able to take a shower when you get up in the morning. You might not have that.
What's our customer base right now? How many village water residents do we go for water?
1,600 roughly.
1,600, that include the commercial?
I'm gonna throw it out there, 1,700, 1,800 by now.
Yeah.
We had a few apartment complexes and they each get based. Depending on how many.
Is that-
1,800 is.
1,800, is that adjusted to residential use or?
No, that's
Just how many?
apartments, how many base
Just how
strikes.
many, you actually build yourself?
That's an estimate, but Marie, we can get you that answer.
Okay. All right, so. I thought it was about 1,500.
It's been more than,
Now I got a question. We're gonna sit down with the joint water board of the kids to work out a rate. Does anybody know what the town is charging us? What are willing to charge us? Town of Wappinger. So we know where we stand.
Have we ever gotten that far?
Only relative to, I think, whatever the rate was back in 2007, whatever, when they were charging us.
No, I'm talking
no,
about
town of Wappinger.
Oh, your town of Wappinger? I
Nobody
don't know
knows.
that.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. But I know when we got charged by the town of Poughkeepsie, we had to really go back. Yeah, did go back and renegotiate because we were really charged quite a
I'm sure they were, but I mean, you gotta, if you're hooking up down there and you're trying to bargain up here, you got a bargaining agreement over here, we can somewhat be what in the middle, or say, hey, I don't need you, we can go here,
Well,
if that's the case, but they don't even have water at the time.
but
So,
it's not as easy as it sounds, because then complications enter into the fray. You have a user at a sewer plant who wants to be a member, so you might get complications there. I'm not saying there will be, but you never know.
we just gotta take that through, plan. You can't hold that against us.
No, but you have it.
Yeah, I think in general, one of the issues that always comes up when you're purchasing water from another location is that the take or pay issue. So that's the issue right now with the way they currently sell water by virtue of the town of Poughkeepsie and the city of Poughkeepsie. And I understand that, because if they've locked up 500,000 gallons a day to us, that's 500,000 gallons a day they cannot sell to someone else.
Right.
So, that's lost revenue, and as a finance person, I can understand that. I don't know if the town of Wappinger would look to sell their water in the same way. It's a very different format. I don't know do you know what their source would be?
As far as where they're getting the water from.
Where the town of Wappinger would be using as their source to provide to us
Right
at
up
that
here.
connection point.
Atlas tank.
Okay, all right, so, the question is, would they be able to sell that water to anybody else? It would be I think the ultimate question. So, I think any of these things, it's a negotiation. The municipalities are looking to, offset some of their costs. They're gonna look for their cost of production. They're gonna look at, possibly some revenue for their water customers at the same time. It's understandable. But I think, unfortunately, we're very early in the game in terms of the town of Wappinger, as if we won't even have a connection. Let's assume this moves forward. If our application is for June, by the time it's approved, we'll probably be at the very tail end of going out to bid in the construction season, if then. So we wouldn't be done until the end of next year, would be my guess. So they may want to wait and negotiate a rate until we know when we're going to be done and when we're actually going to be using. We can certainly run a scenario where we take 3 million, 3.5 million filtration plant, and 800,000 for the water and sewer improvements. Let's put a buffer on there, and we can run an amortization schedule that tells us what kind of increase that would be to 1,800 customers or 1,500 customers across 38 years. That's just now. We can do that, and then we can talk about what kind of impact that would be. If we can sell that, we're all set. But we don't know that we can sell that yet. We're not gonna know if we can sell that before the end of the month. Now, we could ask for another delay, but I prefer not to do that. I prefer to have some plan in place, indicating to them at least what our next steps are and how we're gonna be proceeding. At that point, I think we also then have to kind of commit to monthly updates or quarterly updates, whatever you think they would feel secure that we are moving forward with this process. So, we can look at an amortization schedule this week. And Mayor, if we provide it to you, if you could then offer some commentary to us as to whether you think that is more saleable than, possibly moving forward with a negotiation right now. We could maybe look at negotiating with the town and city of Poughkeepsie in terms of something temporary, as opposed to, because that's really all we're talking about is something temporary and then as a backup. We are looking at about 500,000 gallons a day for a short period of time for taking things offline for construction, correct? And even for the filtration plant, we're talking the end of next year for construction. So I guess the question then would be, would the health department be accepting of that plan, or would we have to have, and let's start out with that. And then if they come back and say, well, what happens if in the next year and a half, that well goes down and you have no water, you have an emergency situation, how are you gonna provide water to your customers? If that's their response, then we'll have to move forward with a different negotiation with the town and the city in terms of whether or not they would sell water to us full on as an emergency for a different period of time outside of construction. Does that sound reasonable?
Well, I think we would, my heart tells me, I think we would always get some water from the town of Poughkeepsie, interconnection that we already have in case of a dire emergency. I always just believe in my heart we would always get it. Now, whether, you pay a rate, but I think we'd always have the water, so I think we shouldn't, while we have to be concerned about it, I think we'll be able to have water for the customers, okay? The users.
Okay. I will draft something together and circulate it.
But I would like to know the time frame. Are we looking for 3 years, 4 years out? We need this temporary 500,000 gallons a day. I think we need to kind of get a time frame. Is it 3 years, 4 years?
Well, I think at the end of the day, if we have the filtration plant up and running, it then becomes simply backup for emergencies. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because we will have our own backup. It will only be if for some reason we have to go online that we resort to that.
Correct.
Which is different from the scenario of while we're under construction, taking the plant offline and having to be able to supply. The problem right now is with only one well functioning, if for some reason we lost that well, we've got nothing. Whereas once the filtration plant is connected and built, we have our backup. We're good. We wouldn't even need that if we didn't want it. Ultimately, it is the most positive thing is to have interconnections in place all around and have a good loop so that if anybody is in dire need, any municipality has a problem, we can all assist each other. That's the ultimate perfect world. So I think if we were able to get the loan, get the village board to agree to the loan, what we're talking about is an emergency backup until the end of 2022. Does that sound reasonable? Now, when I say that, let's revisit the timeframe again.
Does that mean a fully constructed and online plant?
Yes.
That's a little bit aggressive.
Okay, so what's the schedule? That's what I think we're trying to hone into. Assuming we don't get funding approval until November. We're not dealing with this construction season.
So we'll be in construction in 22.
Yeah.
Probably going into 23, so you really won't be online until maybe end of 23, so 24 would be conservative.
Yeah, so that's a very different negotiation than, 18 months from now. So now we're talking about 2024. So I think that's all part of the plan and timeline we want to put together because we are not, when I say we're not going to be negotiating with the board, obviously the village water board is going to be involved, but ultimately the agreement's going to be signed with the village board. So the village board has to be okay with all of this. So it is my desire and intent do you have a May board meeting at the end of May? I know you've got tomorrow, is there a workshop meeting planned?
Yeah, there's always 2 meetings, so we'll have one on Wednesday and one on the 26th.
Okay, so what I would like to do is put the plan together, get everyone's okay here. And obviously it's gonna be a little bit more fluid than probably the health department is gonna like, but we've got what we've got right now. Circulated to everyone here, and if everyone here is okay with it, we'll provide it to the village board for that May 26th meeting. Kevin, if you could, handle any questions that are there, because I won't be available that night. And if the village board is willing to sign off on it, that is then the plan that will go to the health department for the end of the month.
Okay.
All right, so we'll use 2024 as our end date. At this point, I don't think we can do anything else but indicate to the health department that it is our intent to move forward with negotiations with the town, city, however it works out. I'll let them figure out how it works itself out. They'll tell us.
I seem to remember in the original, connection and the negotiations, there was some kind of clause, that if we didn't need to take the total amount of the water, there was a clause that you had to take a minimum.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
That's what I
Okay.
seem to remember.
Correct.
So if you're doing a 4-year window, okay,
Yeah,
it's gonna be, say you're looking for 500,000 gallons a day or whatever you're looking for. It might be you need the 500,000 for 18 months, but it's a 4-year contract, but we're gonna have to take, say, 275,000 gallons a day from wherever we're getting the water from.
mhm,
I seem to remember that was in the contract, the first one.
okay.
Or the only one that they, although I believe it got renegotiated.
I know this is probably a stretch, but do you recall if there was anything in the original contract that indicated how negotiations might go or any kind of protocol for pricing structure if we needed to utilize that connection again in the future? Was there any base slate for any future purchase?
I don't know, I have to talk to the former mayor.
Okay.
Although,
We should have a record
although
somewhere.
you should have the contract.
We should have the contracts.
John will, John probably will.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be good.
But while we're doing all of this, it would be nice to know if worst come to worst, you get an amortization schedule for if we're just paying for this completely by
Yes.
ourselves, by,
Yes.
water
Right.
board and sewer, whatever, however you're doing it. And then
Okay.
try to round up some money.
Yeah. Jess, when you're talking to EFC, could you see if they have any kind of change to the market rate, the current market rate different from December?
Mhm.
Thank you. And then we'll do an amortization schedule based on that. But for right now, we'll move forward with that plan, we'll circulate it to everyone. And then ultimately, I think for the negotiations, John and Nancy, if you could provide us with as much detail as you might have, assuming we are getting funding in November and not starting construction until 2022, where along the construction phase we would actually have to take that 500,000 gallons a day. And obviously, we're, just kind of broad basing it, but as opposed to, what's just the backup that we're committed to. I'd like to have, at least for our negotiating stance, to have as much information as possible, so that we can provide them with the detail to get the best rate we possibly can.
For negotiations, it would be great if we didn't have, as Ricky was saying, a minimum or anything like that. I see, because honestly, we may only need it for a couple of days.
Yeah, and that's what's important to know. What is, as much as we can define that, what our actual need is going to be as opposed to a backup potential need. And again, I don't know how much that's gonna play into it, and we will, everybody is just doing the best for their own municipality and their own customers. That's all we all do when we come to the table. So let's see what we can do as we plan moving forward. See what we can do.
I could actually see phasing the swap over with the new filter plant without even having to take water. Like we said on Friday, we could build most of it and just do the last
And
percent.
then do 7A and then put 7A online with the new filter plant, later do 7,
Couple days, if that.
and then just bring 3 online later. And then 5.
Yeah, that's long,
Not happening.
Right.
that's in the future, but
If that
I don't know,
scenario again, the new filter plant will then, the wells will then pump to the new filter plant. So right now we have 7 and 7A, the redundant wells. So I can take one of those wells and I can send it to the new filter plant first. And then, once everything is in, it's literally just the cut in to, which we can do is, I think it's a wet tap even, into the existing line. So I can do that in several hours and have the plant up and running before you even drop the tanks.
the new plant up and running. And then once it's up and running, then I take the other well and I swap that over. So that then 7 and 7 there. And then I go over across the road.
Right,
and do three.
what you're saying is you were planning to have the existing plant online while the new one's being built.
But yeah, the
And the
the
change
existing
order.
plant will keep running until
Yeah.
the new one is up and functioning. The only
Change
hiccup
order.
there is it's the getting the plant up to speed. Correct. So that would be the only time. It won't be immediately. We have to work out some bugs, timing and things like that to do the.
I think that still needs to be evaluated in regards to what Hungerford and Terry is
Yeah.
gonna have to say about what's existing, what they can do, you know,
There's,
that's what I was-
whether it be the Dream plant, the Hungerford and Terry plant, whatever the case, no matter what, Mary's 100% right. We need to find some way to get Poughkeepsie water. So this way we can clear the DOH problem.
Just remember, in the meantime, we also have maintenance on the wells.
Right.
Which existing, we're only putting chemicals in the well for 8 hours, and they usually go in for 24 hours. So, you know, there's other issues involved of reasons why we could use the town water in certain circumstances.
Right.
That would be helpful to us.
But all in all, we're talking days out of a year versus an annual contract. That's why I say it would be great if we don't have a minimum.
We will see what we can do. Thank you. Anybody else have anything else for this? I'm going to thank Jess and Corey for being here, and you are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you would prefer to be on your way.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming. Thank you. Is that all in that 18 million USDA?
No, that's not.
That's right.
The USDA is purely
So we have to come up with that separately. Did you hear that number there? 3.6 million is the village's share of the $11 million improvement to Tri-Muni.
3.6.
3.6. And John, what's the time frame for that right now?
There isn't a deadline because there's no fixed numbers.
Okay.
Although EPA is pushing hard for the outlet to be done.
Okay.
And Jay is pushing ahead with the border control because of all the sites.
Right. But that's a little, that's under 200, right? That's 100.
Yeah, that was like 150,000.
Okay.
And he's trying to get grant money for that, so that
Okay. So we might not have to come up with anything.
you might even be able to cover it in the existing budget.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, operations report review.
So unless anybody has any questions.
Just wanted to give Ricky a ballpark before we get into operations. If you were to increase the base charge $10 for ballpark amount of users that we have, if you were to do $10 per bill base charge, you would get $100,000 per year, roughly. Just a quick calculation. 92,000 is what you would get. So that's $10 for your bill, $10 for your bill, $10 for your bill. Times six. I already, yeah, I calculated that. So yes.
So our, no, I'm just questioning for our water bill will be $60 more.
Yeah, your base charge should be $45 now. If you had a $55 base charge and you continued everything else the same, the village would earn roughly $100,000 per year. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, you can calculate and play with the numbers, but that's just a ballpark is what I'm throwing at you to give you an idea.
What I'd really like to know,
Yes.
Yes.
Do you not want it to run? You have the permission to show the.
what I'd really like to know is how many people are stealing water with illegal apartments and stuff, what that would generate for us.
There's also
There's a lot of that.
a whole nother theory that, and like I said, I didn't want to interrupt operations, but there's also one of Kenny's great ideas, which is maybe we should implement charges on those that have sprinkler lines. Base charges.
Currently, there is no charge to have the sprinkler, but yet they have the water there for purposes of fighting the fire, and there's just no charge for that. Maybe there should be, whatever, a single charge per year,
$100 a year or something like that, make something like that.
that type of thing, that would be helpful.
Other municipalities do that,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, it's
we
something
don't.
we have to adopt as part of the rate schedule, and I know that Jess just said that, the rates were not changed for 2022, I guess is the year we're talking about.
Correct.
And I guess that's a question that I have, being the next newest to Donnie. How are the rates handled? Who normally approves the rates? I mean, I understand ultimately it's part of the village adoption, but has the water board in the past been involved in evaluating the rates or setting the rates or providing a recommendation to the village board? Or is it just the treasurer and then the village board handles it?
Treasurer, village board, Matt used to do it all.
Yes.
Because I think we should probably, I think Kenny's and John's point is valid. I think we should take a look at the current rate schedule. How is it set up? Is it set up as are they all single connections with a charge? Is it based on connection size? Is it based on meter size? We obviously don't have a sprinkler line charge right now. How are we handling the base rates? And, is a straight 3% increase when we do something like that the appropriate manner in which to handle those base charges, or should we be doing it differently? John, do you know if there's any, either John, how the commercial sizes are handled? Is there?
It's not by size, but instead commercial gets a base rate, which is twice that of a resident.
See, and we've got such a varied size of commercial
And then,
buildings.
and then there's indoor and outdoor,
Yeah.
in the village and out the village. So Outback gets hit hard,
Oh,
because
yes.
technically they're outside the village.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with
Pullman
that.
Wash doesn't, right next door.
But because we don't have enough projects going on right now. And there, just so you're aware, I would like to ask for at least access for myself to, some of the online village information in terms of the rate structures and the schedules and where we're at in terms of the budget, rather than have to keep, bothering the village staff when I want updated information. But, I don't know how that protocol goes around, but I think that we're at a point in time where at least I would like to understand the rate structure. And maybe we should be doing a study on the size of the different commercial users and how their base rate is handled.
I did also, just to throw it out there, and I'm more than happy to help, but Matt, before he had left, had mentioned, had questioned how COVID was going to affect our billing.
Yep. Yep.
And it was not easy, but it was simpler than I thought it was going to be to come up with an idea of how it was and how it was affecting. And
Mhm.
yes, our usage went up,
Mhm.
but we were making the money back because people were at home and
Right.
whether or not people could pay it. And thankfully, everybody, except for the 50 or 35, however many
Right.
Jessica said, are paying their bills.
Right.
So financially, that has not been too much of an impact, but the numbers are there,
Yeah.
and we can come up
But
with.
will they go down? Because,
I don't know.
I mean, there's a difference between how COVID impacts cash flow and how COVID impacts water use.
Usage, correct.
Because ultimately, any bill we render, short of this whole re-levy moratorium that they've got going on right now, we have the ability to recoup everything we bill. So did use go up, and do we have increased revenue on the books because more people were home and therefore they were using their water more?
Well, the commercials went down.
Commercials went, yeah,
Commercials went down
that's
due to
basically what my
balance
study was
Okay.
to compare commercials versus residentials, which
Okay.
is perfect segue into current
Yeah.
operations, which is, what is our daily usage? Which is still under half a million gallons per day,
Okay. So
which is actually really great for the spring. So
Okay.
usually spring is our bad time, and we've been through projects and through finding leaks, minus Prospect. We've been, we got great numbers, so.
Good. That's good. Because as we move forward with these projects, the better our revenue is, the better position we're gonna be in.
Yes.
So I was just saying, unless anybody has any questions, we ended up at 469,000 gallons a day for the month, which is pretty good considering most of our flushing was done, or a lot of it was done in April. So we're towards the end of flushing.
We are done today.
Right, it'll be by the end of this week.
Just a connection point. The item I always used to concern myself with tri-municipal was the average daily flow. So here you have 469 on a water usage. And our average daily flow from the sewer was obviously higher than that, but to what extent higher? And that will give us an idea of any of our I&I problem if we have it, and any other spots or a crack in a sewer line or something, okay? Because you know our sewer usage is not going to be 469.
So just keep in mind that the 469 is what left this plant. It does not, account for,
Yeah, flushing.
lost water wherever it is.
Right.
We have a regular leak detection program,
Which would be.
but we also, do a lot of flushing.
Right.
And that is completely unaccounted for,
Right.
in regards to what Marie is billing for.
The water quality reports are getting ready to go out, correct?
They are.
It's sent to Dan Keeler this morning for his review.
And I'm sorry, there is a real connection here to this question. What are we indicating is our percentage of water bill against what is produced in the current report?
11.2 in the current report, I believe last year's was something more along the lines of 8. So this year, I don't have last year's in front of me, but the plant output went up this year, but also the build usage went up. Just not as much as the plant.
Okay.
We did have a period there, kind of a month or two, where we got a pretty good size of it.
Yes, so that was huge. That was back in January, where we were losing a significant amount of water. So, I'm sure that had an effect on it, unaccounted for sure.
So to follow up on the point John raised, do we feel that we have, and I hate narrow terms, but a lot of illegal connections?
I mean, we have some illegal connections, but I brought them out several times, years going by. And
Okay.
There's so many things there, Mary, that in the report, I put it down now as losses, unmetered municipal use, construction use, flushing of the mains, firefighting, and or non-billed theft. So you have a lot of.
My thing is, you raise the base to collect $92,000. There's a lot of illegal apartments in this village, a lot of them, and nobody's going after them. I think you could probably generate half as much as that, just going after some of these illegals that's going on, and there's a lot of them.
I mean, there's
a lot. I'm telling you, there's a lot. Water, sewer, and garbage fees, you figure 20% more.
I was just gonna say that there's many, many times where, we'll have a customer that has a question, a complaint, whatever the case may be. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll give Marie a call and say, hey, Marie, how many bases do you have for this house? And she'll say 4, and there's 6 electric meters,
Yeah.
So then what we do is we have Marie hook up with Brian and say, Brian, what do you have for this location? So a lot of times people unknowingly bring themselves forward to something that they weren't anticipating. But it happens, fairly frequently to where, it's brought up on our behalf, hey, how many bases do you have? And just for whatever reason, there wasn't a connection between a single family got changed over to a 2, or a 2 got changed to a 4, somewhere it got lost, but we do, have a process for that. So if both the water office and the building department could work together, I'm sure it would only get better.
Yeah, it may be something we want to discuss. We have instituted the savings in our water budget for this year by not processing any salary increases for the water commissioners. We could maybe discuss whether or not it might be worthwhile getting in a low-cost intern that we could share with the zoning and planning department for the summer that could assist with putting together a database like that. So why don't we put that on a future meeting to discuss?
It's not only on the residential end, but it's also on the commercial end to keep in mind too. So when one store turns into 2, such as
We'll be looking
Namco.
to you to kind of give us guidance as to how we
Sure.
want to set
Yeah,
this up and
absolutely.
move forward.
Sure, that's not an
If we
issue.
decide to proceed.
As an example, you have, Imperial Plaza out there. Things are changing, they get split. It was 1, now it's 2. Now they have the amount of meters or whatever change, and, all that's got to be coordinated.
And again, like I said, obviously we can't spend a lot of money, but this is in the budget. If we left the extra salary dollars in the budget, there's not a lot, but there are some. They're not necessarily committed to anything in particular right now. We could look and see if we feel that it may be that we would generate as much revenue as it would cost us to find these things out. So let's just, see what we can think about it for the next month and see what we want to put together.
So as an example, this definitely has been discussed with Brian, that when there's changes made, they have to go to planning. So if planning, discusses it with Brian, and, he has changed all of his existing amounts, but he never passes it along to Marie, it does no one any good.
I think there's issues of trying to go after, to try to get them built for these illegal apartments, and I don't know if it comes down to legality or enforcement. I don't know how.
Enforcement would be number 1.
I mean, I know I can probably name at least 10 illegal apartments right now off the top of my head. And there's probably more that I could come up with. But how do you go after them? That's the question.
Well, let's start with finding out how many and where and documenting it, and then
Research from there.
I think we've got to figure out, there's got to be a mechanism. We just may have to talk it through as we go forward.
My original thought was, and I said this ex-mayor.
One's on 0. We just talked about it.
There's 2 of them. I said, one of my suggestions was that you start billing for them, and if they say they're not there, then you say prove it. And I don't know if you can do that.
I believe that that's our equipment in their homes, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So part of it should be part of our rules and regulations, or exactly whatever it is we call them. It should state in there that because it is our equipment, at any point in time, they have to provide us access to it. If they do not provide us access within a reasonable period of time, and they have the ability to schedule it, we should also have in our rate schedule an inaccessible meter charge. And I'm not suggesting that we use this loosely or, fluidly, but if we are concerned that there are 6 connections there and they do not allow us access to the property after repeated letters and notification and a schedule to do so, we're going to charge them,
Well, like,
period.
in South Missouri, the one we're talking about, there's two apartments in the basement. Egan's old property, that's a 5-family, we're charging them for 3. So how do you go after them? I don't know.
Well, that's honestly done, that's pretty easy. If we can confirm that Brian has it as a 5-family, and Marie's only billing for 3 bases,
Yeah.
we just tell Marie, bill for
That's
5
conversion.
bases.
Yeah. that's
I mean, that, you know, that part of it.
Eames is right there, that was on the real estate market, there's 5 apartments.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
sold
that-
as a
you know,
3-family,
Those,
it's sold
those,
as a 3-family.
you know, that's a simple change. If we can prove that he has it, Marie will just add it.
And I think that's part of the catch-up, if we're trying to move forward with something like this. Just at first, coordinating the water department records with the planning department records. Let's start with that.
Yes.
And then once we see whether or not we're walking hand in hand, we readjust the billing for anyone who's not being properly billed. And then we determine whether it's reasonable to extend the study beyond that to possibly suspicious connections that we feel we need to have access
It
for.
really goes beyond that, I mean, because now, everyone you find, did they avoid paying a recreation fee?
That, building fees, planning fees, taxes, I
It's-
mean,
it's
water,
sizable.
sewer, garbage. I mean,
Like I said, it's-
there's a warehouse down in Bleak Street turned into an apartment with no sewer pipe.
Yeah.
So we are,
at the end of the day, at the risk of sounding like a hard-hearted person, the village, other village residents who are paying their appropriate share should not be subsidizing those who are not. So if this brings that
I've
out,
been saying that for 5 years.
we can discuss, we can certainly discuss on the water end, how far back we're going to charge them once we find it.
Well,
It was-
it's also on the sewer end.
On the sewer end,
It's also
absolutely.
on the recreation.
Absolutely.
It's everything.
Right.
Well, if one of them was being advertised for the last 6 years for water, for an Airbnb,
That people forget that they are recording out there exactly what it is they're advertising, that it can now be seen in this environment and documented moving forward. So, like I said, I hope this person more than pays for themselves in terms of bringing in additional revenue to the village. All we can authorize as water board right now is at least a sufficient amount to get this ball rolling.
Yep.
And then see where it takes us, and maybe how it can move forward and benefit the other revenue streams in the village.
Yep.
So and again, I say internship, I don't even know what that means anymore, especially in the age of COVID, but let's check it out and see what we can do.
Good.
What else you got for me?
Well, that's basically all I have. Again, unless anybody has any questions, everything is in your report for your review. Actually, maybe we could talk about the rehab of well number 7. So, you know, we got those results back. Those results were sent to the water board members. They are recommending, you know, rehabbing it. It's not an emergency. Speaking with the mechanic, it was more related to pump issues than it was the actual aquifer itself. But when you're taking the pump apart, you might as well clean the well at the same time. So that, we usually like to do that in the colder weather months when the usage is down, based on our current conditions of only having the one well. We definitely would not want to do it, you know, in the warmer weather months, you know, our highest usage months.
So we're talking about next year's budget.
November.
Yes, I mean, November, December, you know, January timeframe. And so we're into, or June 1st, we'll start the next year's budget. So I'm not sure if that's already been done. I'm assuming it has, correct? Yes, so usually what we were doing was putting in the budget for, you know, one of the wells to be done.
Okay,
So, you know, we should be in good shape.
okay, good. So, you know, unless we have other extraordinary expenses coming up between now and then, that we weren't planning on, or you weren't including in your budget process, then I think we should, move forward with doing that. Donnie, any objections to that as a plan?
I do not
Is it
know
already
the answer
included
to
in the
that. I
budget
just know
going
what they
forward?
used to
We
do.
have to look at that. Again, the level of detail.
The wells?
They left so much.
Yeah, the wells are
Yeah,
always,
it might already be included.
it already is, I'm pretty sure it already is,
Good, okay.
which is roughly 30K.
Yeah, in the neighborhood. And then the only other item, is I discussed with you about, the condition of the, 2008 pickup truck. So I just had to put a new power steering pump and a power steering box. And, it was a significant amount of money, $1,400 or something like that. And then the bed itself is starting to rot from the frame. So just for future considerations,
I did speak to Jess about it. She was going to, look to see what we might do as a plan moving forward. I have spoken to, Pete and the operators, just so the other board members know that, as part of the budget planning process, we should be trying to put together at minimum a 5-year capital plan. Include the vehicle replacement as part of that. Now, whether, what we decide to age the vehicles at, they certainly last more than 5 years, in the good old golden days of prolific money. It was great to be able to turn these vehicles around in 5 years and always have a great, almost new vehicle, but I don't think that's realistic anymore. So at least having a 5-year capital plan that understood that at which point in time in the next however many years we need to replace one vehicle, we need to, whatever else it is we have going on within the facility that needs to be addressed, that wouldn't be part of the normal operation and maintenance. We need to plan for that as well in terms of the rate schedule. And I think it would be good if every vehicle, because we have 3 right now, correct? 2 trucks and an old police car.
correct.
Yeah, the police car was kind of a,
It's
kind of a gimme, just, hey, we couldn't get rid of it, so you might as well use it.
Right.
Old car.
Yeah.
But we certainly don't want to have everything all replaced at the same time. So, to be able to have a reasonable replacement schedule between the vehicles would be a good plan as well. So we're going to nail this. I want to see the details of everything. To me, looking at the well maintenance with a large number as opposed to, these are the list of things that, we would have to do, the 10 items that, we would address as expenses from well maintenance during the year. That's what I want to get it down to. So that it, you're thinking it's going to be 2,000 and it ends up being 10, we know we have a problem with some other items in the budget. If we were thinking it was going to be 10 and it's 2, then now we've got $8,000 left to look at addressing something else, whether it's a specific operational item at that moment, or whether it's taking that 8,000 and putting it into, a capital replacement for a vehicle for that year. But at least we've got a better handle on what's going on.
Yeah, Lane, they're pretty good about giving you an estimate. So, prior to the end of a budget year, or when you're working on the next year's budget, we could always ask them, hey, what's your, best estimate for rehabbing, one of the wells in this time frame? And they'll, they're usually, pretty good.
But it might already be included there.
Oh, yeah, yes.
A lot of those items I'd be more concerned with the things that are coming up for the first time.
I'm talking about in general, whether it's a well or anything else. We know we're going to be transitioning in a few years. We know we're going to be bringing in new operators. One of our operators may be retiring if we decide it's okay to let them go. I know you guys aren't necessarily looking to be involved in the financial end, and I'm not looking for you to be involved in the gory details, but having at least a general understanding of, as you touch each thing, how is that impacting the next thing that you're touching? And what we're doing with money, how the water sales are coming in. We could be well within our budget for water expenses, and we could blow our budget because our water sales go down, or because of the legal connections that, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving targets. And it's my desire that the board and the operators at least have a good arms around working knowledge of.
Yeah, that's fine. We definitely don't have a problem with that. So, previously it was done where we had a listing
Mhm,
of, items that were performed on a yearly basis
mhm.
and, have the estimates along with it.
Yep, good.
And, but, we're not opposed to it.
Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I just have one quick question. It's in my head. The media inside of the softeners, we have never changed that before. I don't know the dollar amount, but we can easily find out what.
I gave Matt the amount. I don't know, I'm sorry.
What do you know what it
I
is in
interrupted
today's?
you.
No, it's okay.
It's like 20 grand.
Okay, so that's a big item,
Okay.
right? It's safe to say that's fairly big. My question to Casey and yourself, Mary, is maybe if we put this plan, can we throw that in there? Can we, under granting, or is that still under operations capital costs?
Oh, that would definitely be contingency on any grant, probably 10%, 20,000 is not terrible, but.
I mean, just keep in
It's
mind,
not-
that's
it's
Keep in mind,
not-
it's-
The question in my mind is whether it could be part of the loan, whether the media replacement would be considered part of a capital improvement plan in terms of borrowing funds.
I'm not sure. I mean, resurfacing your tank is
Part of operation.
maintenance and not capital.
The first set of media would be
Right.
a
Right,
cost.
it
Right.
sounds like
Which
maintenance
it
to
was.
me.
It's a tough call. I mean,
Have you had?
Well, I could
specific
write it out
question?
that it was, the media needed to be changed to be working better with the green sand.
So that's,
It's true,
I
yeah,
mean, I could, then that.
that it's part and parcel with the filter
Yeah.
plant,
Okay.
yeah,
As part
Maybe
and
we
parcel
could-
with the
Yeah.
filter plant is that the media needs to be upgraded
that makes
and the
sense.
softeners.
just also keep in mind is that's material only. Now you need to have a company come in and back out what's existing. So there's a cost for that, which I already gave to Matt. I don't know the number offhand.
did you, get perchance an email or verbal or paper or?
Definitely, it was not in an email.
Okay.
But I did give him the information and frankly, we would need to do it over again anyway because there's,
It's hard to
6-8 months went by anyway.
Okay.
And then, do they want us to do the work, which we can do the work in putting the media back into software.
Mhm. Okay.
So there are other costs involved.
Okay.
That it was just for the media alone, just the material itself.
And you gotta take the windows out, right?
Well,
just one. Hopefully.
no, not to back it out, or at least that was the original thought, that he wanted to come through the garage. He said he had enough
Oh.
hose
Oh,
to be able to do that.
oh, good, better.
But, if that's certainly an option, if we could come through the window. But that was his thought when we came here to
Good.
get the pricing. He said, no, I can go right through the garage
That's
and,
better.
The reason I brought it up is because it's within the next, most likely within the next,
Budget cycle.
correct,
Okay, so our next
Hopefully
fiscal
not.
year, starting the next fiscal year, okay.
but probably.
All right, so if you could dig out those details again and provide them to John, so we could include it, that would be helpful.
We should be able to get that pretty easy.
yeah, I mean, Marie should still have it, and then when we meet with them, then,
Yeah.
we can get the pricing on it again.
You should be able to just call them up and have it updated.
That's what we did, yeah, the last time, So, yeah, that's not a problem.
Anything else operationally?
No,
You got the information on South Main Street.
Yes,
That helps.
from,
about what, I'm sorry?
Bill
The
Pova.
line, the fire line on South Main.
Yes.
He was sitting on it because they changed out the backflow preventer in the building. And that was going through OGS's approval process, so he's been sitting on it for a while.
So the only other question that is not answered as to whether or not it's on, we're assuming it's off.
Well, the sprinkler isn't even built yet.
Okay,
I mean, they had the stack inside the building with the backflow preventer. They
Gotcha.
had spec'd out the wrong one.
Okay.
That wasn't on the approved list at the state level, so they had to swap it out, and that's been holding it up
Gotcha.
this whole time. But I did get them to send me the health department results, the testing results.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
So that's our item 8A, correct?
Mhm.
All right, going back to 7A. In terms of, just because I want to make sure communication is flowing as much as possible and that we document our things. Obviously, one of the problems we've been addressing is we don't have a backup water source right now. Our water needs to be our water for our village customers. That's got to be our priority. So I'd like to throw out for discussion the possibility of providing a resolution today that we would give to the village board, asking for a moratorium on outside water sales until such time as we have our additional water source available, whether it be, I'd rather it not be the connection, quite honestly, because why should we pay for water at a possibly higher cost to accommodate those outside the village unless we're going to set up a purchase plan that would cover that cost, which is possible. But at this point, I think we can probably do a resolution that is as simple as we are asking the village board for moratorium on outside village water sales until such time as the water board deems that additional water is available for that purpose. Open for discussion.
Good idea. I think it's a good idea. Keep it in the village.
Any objections or concerns by anyone else?
That's all. We do actually make the Buccaneers connection. That we were supposed to, that was negotiated with us connecting with them green.
But if we have the connection, we've got the other source. So that's, I would think that should negate the, until additional source is available. Okay, seeing no objections, can I ask for that? Someone make that?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. While we're making resolutions, and I apologize for this being after the fact, but we had a meeting on Friday. We needed to empower Casey Engineering to provide the 90% design to the health department. The operators have reviewed it. They provided their comments on Friday. We have all agreed that we are going to march forward with that in addition to another plan that the operators are investigating to see if that might provide an option for a different type of process to get us to the filtration level. But that being said, can I ask for a resolution by the water board indicating to Casey our desire for them to move forward with that presentation to the health department? Okay, second item under new business. We have a complaint from a customer. You all have copies of it. And the reason I ask for this is because to the best of my knowledge, there is no official protocol in terms of how we handle complaints by a customer who says they don't want to pay their water bill. I don't plan on visiting this at every meeting, but what I would like is a direction to provide to our staff that says, this is how we're going to handle these types of complaints, so that she doesn't have to keep guessing or coming to us. So we have Mr. O'Brien, and I'm going to ask the operators to just provide a little history as to why he thinks he should not be obligated to pay his water bill.
So basically, his original complaint was about the discoloration of the water. And this specific line is one of the ones that we had discussed that feeds the town of Poughkeepsie residents. And there's no means of flushing without the removal of an existing meter to flush the line. I could flush before that line, I could flush after the line, but unless you flush the individual's line by removing the meter, it's like more or less temporary
Is
So-
Mr. O'Brien the not correct connection, or is it his neighbor that has the incorrect?
Well, no, it's not that it's an incorrect connection. It's one of those ones that are going through people's
Right.
yards on a single line teed off
Yeah,
with no ability to flush it.
which is not our preferred.
No, we always, like to have the ability to flush something when these situations occur. But without having the ability to do that, the only way to do it is, removing an existing meter and flushing the line until it comes clear. So it's a 2-inch line, it breaks down to 3/4-inch lines. And, himself, his neighbor,
Yes, all copper.
yeah, it is copper, and it's frankly, it's a dead end. And,
Is it the dead end piece?
yes, so this is that connection that I had described earlier that comes off of Delaverne, goes between the curb and the sidewalk in front of Camp Healy's Physical Therapy. And then, actually goes closer to the homeowner's, house that's in the town of Poughkeepsie, once it gets, beyond the village's line.
It's right out here. And as soon as you leave the actual Village of Wappinger sign with all the rotary and all the knickknacks underneath it that say, welcome to the Village of Wappinger, it's 1, 2, 3, I think it's just 3 houses, right? 3 or 4 houses to the left. They're all 2-inch copper, and then there's a 3/4 with a curb stop that come off. As Ken mentioned, there's no way to flush it out unless you go into somebody's house and physically flush it before the meter. So you have to disassemble the meter to flush it. And then however long it takes, Ken did his neighbor's house before, like a month before, and then I went into Gerard's house. He was nice enough to let me in, and I flushed it out. While I was there, I also flushed out his house filter, which is disastrous looking, and I actually do have video, but I'm not about to put it up on here. And he had complained to Marie, hey, why should I be paying for this and that? And I said, well, I'll be honest, this was after I had went and flushed it out, and I said, well, maybe you can go back to Marie and negotiate something, which is why this is at the table. He is an outside user. And I had mentioned to him, why don't you try going, you're not going to get a free bill. But I said, why don't you try negotiating, at least for the past bill, getting an inside user rate versus an outside user rate. Turns out the difference is not even $10. So.
Let me ask this question. What would be the ultimate correction for this?
They go in the town of Poughkeepsie.
Give them away.
They're in the town.
Or just like, well, physically, just like the Von Berg Barisha that we talked about before, it would be to install a properly sized main with a flushing.
Yes,
Okay. Our responsibility or his responsibility?
that would be ours. If we want to keep him as a user, that would be ours.
Are
Okay.
you putting that in the town of Poughkeepsie? Oh, you install it?
You would?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So you really, it probably was done without an intermunicipal agreement. It probably doesn't have any of the things that you would need burned.
Right.
There's probably no, water supply application or agreement to even serve that water. There used to be, the village used to serve Swenson Drive with water. That's what that meter pit in the front is.
Yes.
And the 2-inch line they constructed in the 70s maybe, along the grass strip of East Coffee. So I'm guessing that they solved the problem at the time, but it might not meet current regulations the way it's done.
Estimated cost of connecting him the way we think he should be connected, not to the town of Poughkeepsie.
You'd have to construct a main, you'd have to go through the engineering to make all these agreements and go through DEC to get a water supply application and construct a physical main in that grass strip, which would be
A lot.
substantial.
Okay. Comments and input, please.
Listen, I think
Is it next to the ordinance house?
Yeah, actually, he is Garnet's house. Now, when I say Garnet's, there's 2 Garnets.
Yeah,
The one, if you're facing where Haddon used to live, to the left,
Yes.
that was Dave Garnet owned that house.
I think it's an unfortunate situation, but and first of all, let me also say, he is not a sewer customer. He is only a water customer.
Correct.
So, my initial reaction was, well, I'm sure the toilet's still being flushed, so he definitely owes for the water he uses for the sewer side, but he is not a sewer customer. That being said, I understand when people are concerned about the quality of their water, but my guess is, he doesn't have an extra water tank outside that he's using to create his shower water or his dishwater or anything else. I understand he put in a water softener and that was an expense for him, but
Filter.
this is a road filter.
Yep.
This is a slippery slope. You start, adjusting people's bills for one water complaint, the road doesn't end. You talk about going on people's property and making their fixes for them.
If he doesn't have the village water, both, I know in the village, you're not allowed to drill a well, so he would have to,
Right.
come up with an alternative, which is to connect to the town.
I was gonna say, I don't think the health department would approve of that. As long as you're in any kind of
They will
sewer
not.
water system, you can't do that. I'm also going to say that when I said to Marie, please tell him that he needs to put something in writing to the village board, this is not what I consider, an official application to the village board for relief from his water bill. But this being the first time and at least trying to get some type of protocol or response set up for him, I allowed it through for this meeting, okay? But it is my recommendation that the protocol here on out be an official letter to the village water board asking for relief, stating the reasons and any backup documentation they can provide. I think there may be individual instances that have to be evaluated on their own merit, but my recommendation for right now in terms of response be, we understand that you are unhappy with the quality of the water that you're receiving, unfortunately, and I'm going to look for help in terms of, writing the response. Your particular type of hookup does not, allow for us to have access in the way that we should. We have to be very careful, that we don't cross any legal lines in what we say, but that the only way to improve the quality of your water would be to change your connection. And we believe, and that would be up to you as to how you pursue it. But as of right now, the water bill stands as it is.
Could you put a filter on it to?
Well, that's the thing. He does have a filter and the filter is working. It's trapping the manganese. What he's probably upset at is the amount of times that he has to change the filter.
That is
And
exactly
how
what he's upset.
often.
That's exactly what he's upset.
Which, there's a lot of people that are in the same circumstance
Correct.
where they're upset because, if you have a clear housing and you have a white filter within days,
It's black.
it's gonna start changing color to the point where they're gonna be going, hey, what's going on here, So that's his circumstance. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
I'd say, correct me if I'm wrong, but our obligation to bill people for water is to provide potable water.
Correct.
Yes.
As long as we are fulfilling the obligation to provide potable water and they are using it, and he is using it because he's got, well, I never think about
It's
it.
about 1,000 cubic feet, I
Yeah.
think, is what he
He's
uses.
using it.
Actually, he's less than that. but,
The base rate, as far as I'm concerned, is more of a state of readiness type of thing. The water operators are here, the insurance is going, the plant is running, whether they turn on their tap or not. So, they're paying for that no matter what water they're using. Beyond that, there is then a water rate for the water that you're using, and he is using water, and he's being billed for the water that he's using. So, I think it's an unfortunate circumstance, but it is what it is, and therefore the water bill.
So he didn't want to pay his bill, it says.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I did tell him, I don't think that's gonna fly.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mentioned, maybe we can give you a different rate, but it turns out that the rate is minimal.
In the past, I think the water board has only done that when there was a leak that they gave them the one bill.
Right, we'll give you a break.
Grace period if someone had a leak and they got it.
Right.
this one here, you would open Marysburg, you would open yourself up to Mr. Barish would call in and say, I'm sure he has.
Anybody with a dirty
he's
water
the
complaint would
on the
bring it,
other one.
would open up, yep.
Yeah.
Which there's quite a few. So
That's the same.
I agree, we shouldn't do that.
I mean, you can also inform them that we're pursuing filtration of the water, which will also solve some of that.
After explaining it to him that it was not dirt and it was actually manganese, he did feel very relieved. And anybody that ever has those complaints, when you actually explain to them that what manganese is, and the actual reaction is just simply aesthetic and it's between chlorine and manganese, they feel a lot better. Most people think it's just dirt and rust and they're actually worried about the pipe in the ground and the multi-$1,000 to replace that and this and that and the other thing. But you actually explain it to them and tell them,
I
this
would
is the picture.
actually love for you to send me a paragraph like that, with that language, that we could put in a response letter.
I take manganese every day in my multivitamin.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody takes it with their multivitamin. So the fact that people are worried about it, it does mess up your clothes when you wash them.
All right, so, AD status of filter. Do you have anything new on that?
No, other than, just we made the contact with Hungerford and Terry. We're gonna be meeting with them. And, and then they'll coordinate with KC Engineering on what they come up with and between the two parties, make a determination from there.
So John will be at that meeting with you? And them?
No, I don't think it's necessary for him to be at the meeting, but certainly, moving forward, once there's a plan in place on what they think is the best course, that's when we'll put them, with John, and then, between the two parties, they can discuss, the best course of action.
I think they're
I think they're, they're just gonna be asking about, get a visual,
Oh,
they're gonna be
space.
asking
Right.
for,
Space is big.
water sample results,
Okay. All right,
things like that. Physically looking at the site, see how much room is there. They already have the plan in regards to what's in their panel.
then
and-
when they have an idea, then John could talk to him on the phone.
Correct. And so, they'll come up, do we have enough room? Don't we? You only have room for this. Maybe we could do it like that.
Good.
And then between the two of them, they can, maybe come up with an option or, see what the best course of action is.
Status letter going to the homeowners on South Missouri and Prospect. I think we have taken care of that subject for today. And bill number 7 recap. So anybody have anything else that they'd like to bring up today?
We've talked about this in the past, and it's come up again. The trees in front of, the water plant, especially Mr. Vespucci's property. He's concerned about the branches, put up a new shed. Anyway,
What trees are they?
I guess the ones on our property are leaning over on his. See, the fence over there is,
The new fencing along that line is about 20 feet east of where the actual property line is. And at the time when we built the plan, the board at that time didn't want to spend the money to move sheds and relocate those trees. So they just left the fence where it was in the old spot. When Mr. Vespucci first had an issue 3 or 4 years ago about trees there, I had Jim Basley Senior, who's the highway guy's tree guy. He said he didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. There was some dead stuff, which at the time he cut out of there, but he didn't see, anything, any glaring problems. Mr. Vespucci was looking for some type of reassurance. He wanted somebody to say, no branch will ever fall out of that tree, and the tree guy was obviously not.
I noticed there's a new shed in the backyard, so.
So 20 feet of those properties are being used.
They always were down, and at the time,
Yeah.
John Chase had asked that we move the fence over there, and we said, well, if we move the fence over there, those people have to relocate sheds.
So those sheds are all on village property.
Some of them were, I think some of them have since changed.
No, they actually moved those sheds
Yeah.
in 2000,
Some of them have
11
been moved.
when we started
Now
this,
they're all on.
to be off of it, but we put the fence in the same spot.
Yeah, the fence never moved because they didn't want to spend the money to do
Yeah,
that,
I get that.
or to cut the trees and to regrade it. So they just left the fence where, the fence was never on the property line, and the new fence is not on the property line, because they didn't want to do that. But our tree guy, I mean, you can have him go out again and look, but his response at the time was, there's nothing, there's no imminent
Go look
danger.
again. If he gives you a report, says there's nothing dead.
All right, I mean, we talked about this in the past, where you're gonna say, I want a written letter.
Yeah, and no, there's no tree person in the world who's gonna say, yes, I
So,
guarantee you, the branches
no,
now.
it's
But he can look at it and say, there's no dead stuff.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, can he indicate that in writing?
I don't know.
Young Jim, will he do it?
Well, my contract was with Jim Senior. So that's why I called last time.
I think Jim Seaver's cheaper than Jim.
Well, young Jim will put it in writing, maybe if there's nothing dead and the trees.
If they want to do it, I don't really care.
Young Jim is the village's landscaper, right?
But the tree guy is his father.
Okay.
Could we get Ms. Guzzi to, and I'll be more than happy to meet him,
Yeah.
exactly point out what he doesn't like, what he does like, put a ribbon around it.
I can reach out to him and.
Paint it, I'd be more than welcome to invite him onto the property. I'll even cut him a path with the lawnmower if you want.
I can reach out to him. I
Um,
mean, he's home all the time.
Yeah.
I know he works from home from now on.
Oh, I was unaware. So if he can just say this, and this is what we don't like, maybe it's just a miscommunication thing between.
No, I don't think there's any miscommunication. I think that he was looking for something more than the tree guy was willing to offer him, but it's
Right.
certainly not unreasonable if he points out which trees he thinks are in imminent danger to have the tree guy look at it.
Gotta fix the camera.
Is it about the tree being
Tilted
gone or
towards the
branches
table.
overhanging?
Some people would rather
Branches.
see that.
Yeah, the big trees, the big trees in the.
Some of them are big, yes.
If they come down, it's.
But that's why I was asking
All right.
which trees is he talking about? Maybe I can just do it myself.
Okay, all right, well, yeah.
He's
if
He's
you
a
can-
tree guy,
if you can
John.
do that, John.
Water guy, tree guy.
Get him to put it in, I'm a big fan of putting things in writing, get him to put it in writing, exactly what his concern is it about the tree, is it about the branch, what is it? 'Cause
Yeah,
if
if it's a
he
branch or
said,
something.
the branches are fine, they're not in imminent danger of falling, but he thinks the whole tree is gonna come down in a storm, that's different, so. If you could get him to just at least identify in some way,
I'm sure he wants the tree removed,
well,
but it would be nice for him to at least
Yeah.
communicate and we'll,
yeah,
I'll give him a
Communication is
call
best
tomorrow.
way.
and Give you a shout.
absolutely. You've got the numbers.
thank you. Anything else? Real quick, for the record, I
Yes.
will
Yep.
be unavailable for next month's board meeting. I will be traveling. Kevin and Jason will work out who is going to handle that meeting, and I will, I'll be speaking with them ahead of time, and Marie, to make sure your items on the agenda. I don't know if I'll be able to dial in. Our plans are still a little bit up in the air, but I will not be here. So at this point, the meeting is still scheduled for,
June 7th.
thank you, Monday, June 7th at 4 p.m. Any O&M meeting scheduled, or are we good for this month?
I think we're fine unless
Unless
John
you guys-
needs to meet for anything, we're open.
And you saw that we have a request into Rhinebeck. for
Yes,
doors.
actually, I don't know if that's gonna be necessary.
No? Okay.
Honestly, no, I don't think so, because we've both been to the city plant
Poughkeepsie.
Oh.
40 times,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
you know,
I'll
so.
cancel the request.
Yeah,
If
I
it's the
think
same
that
thing,
would,
we don't-
and
it's
we
redundant.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you're aware of that. We are, considering going to see a manganese green sand plant that Water and Wastewater Authority has in pressurized.
How's that? Is
vessel.
that better?
Yeah, at this point, I don't really think
There you
it would be necessary, but thank you.
Okay.
pressure vessel, I could have taken up to the capital level.
Yeah.
I think I do, so I don't care.
Where's that?
Okay, yeah.
That's
You're
good.
welcome.
That's true.
I think most of these are.
The one just.
Still moving.
Out of the Albany, we did
Thank you.
a.
Thank you.
Go to the other room?
Yeah,
System.
that's what I did.
It's, you know, an example of what.
The center that opened up like 2 years ago?
Did
Yes.
you ever
Yeah.
communicate with that
Yeah.
operator
Thanks.
in the Dutchess County or no?
Rhinebeck? Yes.
No, where Mary.
You guys there?
No, not yet.
Meeting's adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned, 6:20.
Restaurant?
All right.
This is all,
Yes,
We'll shut
through
this
the
off.
doors and take a left.
Thank you.
two left.
Eats out.